Welcome to the Hunter's Advantage podcast, where a group of budget-minded hunters scour the woods for whitetail bucks and whatever other big game is in season. Tune in each week to hear the hilarious public and private land hunting stories and mistake-filled lessons learned. We believe that every hunt brings us closer to God and that we exist to share the good news. And now, your hosts, Christian Babcock and Jake Gaylord.
Listen, guys, we wouldn't be able to do the podcast if it wasn't for you all. So we just want to say that you guys are greatly appreciated, and thank you for following along each week.
And speaking of support, we are partnered with Out on a Limb Manufacturing, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, Matt and Chase are great, down-to-earth guys, and they make some of the best saddle hunting products out there. Whether you're looking for a set of climbing sticks or a mobile, lightweight, hang-on tree stand, or maybe you're even a one-sticker.
You mean tree Pilates?
Yes, tree Pilates. If you've been to the grocery store or the gas station lately, you know that Uncle Joe is doing his absolute worst to take all your money. That's why we need hunting gear that lasts year after year. And trust me, I've been rocking the same Out on a Limb Shakar climbing sticks for 4 years and the Ridge Runner 2.0 saddle hunting platform for a few years as well. This gear is built to last.
We can confidently say that Out on a Limb is the best bang for your buck.
And it's the best gear if you want to deflate a big old buck.
Ooh. Make sure you use code HNTA15 at outonalimbmfg.com for 15% off anything on their website.
So if you can show them the same support that you guys show us, please go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today, we are joined by another special guest. We got a repeat offender, Joe Miles. Thanks for jumping on the podcast, man.
I hadn't heard that since college. Repeat offender.
Well, you're hanging out with the right crowd then, I guess. But for people who might not know, maybe they're living under the rock, Joe is most known for his travel bow hunting style. If you creeped his Instagram, kind of like we have been doing the last, I don't know, probably 2 years, you see he travels all over the world to hunt anything from axes to big giant bucks. He's also the owner of Osseo Gear and the host of the Mission Whitetail podcast.
Heck yeah.
So,
well, Joe, we had you on
resume.
last summer. It was pretty close to a year ago, I'm pretty sure. And, you're obviously hard at it pretty much year round on chasing critters with a bow, but what have you been up to lately in terms of bow hunting?
Well, last trip was Argentina and then back out to Texas. We did red stag and water buffalo in Argentina. And then we did another axis deer hunt out in Texas. That wrapped up a little bit after the 4th of July. Maybe it was right before the 4th. I think it was the very end of June is when that wrapped up. And since then, man, I've been shooting a lot. I've been, I'm pretty happy with my bow setup, and I've just been shooting it a lot and been playing around with the traditional stuff a little bit. I kind of have gone back and forth with that the last few years and just never have fully committed to the traditional side of it. I saw you guys were at Black Widow, and that was pretty cool. That had to be a great experience to go out there and hang with those guys. That's a legendary company, and I'm sure that was a lot of fun. But yeah, man, that's it. I've been shooting a lot, and we talked a little bit off air that our season down here in South Carolina starts August 15th. So got some cameras in the swamp, found a couple nice bucks. Of course, the best one I found is quote unquote on one of the spots my son is going to hunt this year. So that's what I get for having a son that loves to bow hunt and is 20 years old now.
Oh yeah.
Going to have one less son at the beginning of bow season. I understand.
Yeah, I need to. He needs to get his own dadgum lease, his own permission spots, and leave dad alone.
So are you committing to picking up the struggle stick like full time, or are you just going to try to mix it in there?
No, I'm going to mix it in some this year. We have a 5 buck limit here in South Carolina, and not a lot of giant deer. They're a lot of fun to hunt, and they're really, really smart. And the place that I can hunt is real close to my office, like 10 minutes away. So it's easy for me to slip off in an afternoon, get in a tree or early in the morning. So I'm going to probably try it here at home a little bit, and then road trips or flights to wherever, out of state hunts, I guess, then I'll stick with my compound, and we'll see how this year goes. And if I don't turn it into firewood, then maybe next year we dive all the way in.
How do you feel about that? Having a $5 limit. I mean, because here in Oklahoma, that kind of seems out of the ordinary. I mean, we have $2 that we're able to take, and we feel like sometimes that's almost too much, because we'll go and we'll see 25 doe, but only, maybe $1 or $2, and they're probably only like 60 inches. How do you feel about that, having such a high bag limit?
It's, I'm not going to bash our state. I love South Carolina. It's my home, always has been. We've got a ton of deer. I mean, a lot of deer. I mean, but it's exactly what you say. Our buck to doe ratio is way out of whack. I mean, if you, some of these big food plots and bean fields and stuff, you may see exactly that: 30 does in an afternoon and 1 or 2 bucks. It's difficult. Our rifle season comes in August 15th as well, and it runs all the way to January 1st. So but the benefits of South Carolina is you've got a lot of targets of opportunity. You get to go a lot, and it's a place that it's tough to kill a mature deer with your bow. So you learn a lot, and you're able to take those lessons and take them to other states, like a Kansas, a $1 state limit, or Ohio, and where the buck doe ratio is a little closer to what it naturally should be.
Yeah. No, that is kind of nice. I guess in a way, having that much opportunity, because it seems like, let's say you hold out for a good buck here in Oklahoma, or at least I'm talking for myself here. By the time that big one rolls around that you're actually wanting to shoot, it's like, okay, I don't know what to do with my hands right now. Like, I've only been in this conversation or this environment for like maybe 3 or 4 times on like a good buck that like I'm wanting to shoot right here 3 times in the last 2 years, maybe. And so, and the only reason we do that is just because obviously we have 2 buck tags, and you don't want to take one with a smaller one and then hold out for a good one, and then you get that good one, then it's like, okay, now I just kind of, you feel like almost a wasted tag syndrome in a way. So I could see how the bigger bag limit could actually benefit in a pretty good way.
Yeah, we get 3 over the counter that come with our license, and I think it's maybe 4 or 5 doe tags, and then you can get 2 more buck tags that you actually have to pay for. Now, it wasn't until a few years ago that it was unlimited bucks. You could literally, my dad probably killed 15 bucks in one season. I mean, there were several seasons I killed 7-8 bucks in a year. It was nuts. Like unlimited bucks, and they limited the does. So it was very, very, very odd, but they're making improvements incrementally. We still have part of the state that you can run hounds, chase them with dogs. And, that season again comes in August 15th and runs all the way to January 1st. So, chase them with dogs, hand grenades, tripwires, whatever it takes.
Well, that had to have some sort of an impact in terms of your experience as a bow hunter, because, there's people that hunt in maybe a singular state and not in a target rich environment, and they might get 1 or 2 opportunities in a whole season. Right. And that learning curve might take them 5 years to learn in a season what you might have got in 4 or 5, 6 shot opportunities in a single season. So that had to kind of propel you forward in terms of like, making the mistakes and getting to learn a little quicker, wouldn't you think?
It definitely did. And especially like bow setup, when you're shooting 7-8 whitetail a year, in your home state, not including what you're shooting when you travel, it really helps you fine tune your archery setup for whitetail. So it definitely has an advantage for that, for sure. But if you're after a giant trophy buck, South Carolina is certainly not the place for that.
No, it's like a proving ground. That's like your really, really good practice for, you practice and you go play the big game out there in the Midwest when you're traveling for the big boys.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm curious. I live down here in Central Texas now, and I've never got out for Axis, even though I probably should have at this point after living here for several years. I've heard those things are pretty cagey. What's your experience with Axis? Have you been hunting them for a while?
I've shot a handful of them, but yeah, I mean they are. I won't. You know how the deer are in Texas? They're a little more relaxed than a lot of the states, or at least the areas in South Texas that I've hunted. That the deer tend to put up with more. Those Axis, man, they are cagey. They are very spooky. That anything that looks out of place to them, they will just take off running. I was able to hunt them in the rut this year, and that was a lot of fun hearing them do the Axis roar. It's a very unique sound. And that was a lot of fun to do that. And then the way they, some of them will be in velvet, some of them will be, hard horn, and some will have shed. It's just really odd that there's no real rhyme or reason to how their antler growth goes and that sort of stuff. So they're a neat critter, and they're really good to eat. My wife and son love venison. We eat a lot of it, and that's one of the best game meats that we can get in North America, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're a really cool, really pretty animal too. I'd really like to get after one. And there's a lot of opportunity for them, here in Texas. And I wanted to, so I've seen Cameron Haynes, I think Joe Rogan, those guys hunting them on Lanai in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a fun way to hunt them too.
Oh yeah. That would be incredible. I've seen that. I've seen that too. It'd be neat to go down there. I think that author, Jack Carr, the one that writes the different James Reese books or what Terminal List, I think that was his first one. He's actually involved with Pineapple Brothers, might be the name of the outfit down there. And I'm sure that's where those guys go. It's a big axis deer place on Lanai. And yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
So I saw recently you've been doing a couple other hunts. How was your trip to Africa? Now, that looked like a blast when you went the last time.
It really was. Yeah, it really was. I worked over there for 7 years, right when I got out of school. And so I've kept up with those guys for and have tried to go back at least every other year, if not every year. And this was my first time actually hunting in the Kalahari in Botswana. And the point being, they've got really big kudu there, and we were there during the kudu rut. And so that was a lot of fun. They're a big 600, 700 pound animal, and they're rutting like crazy. Necks are all swollen up, coming into water holes with cows. They don't bugle, although I did hear one grunting like a whitetail. It was a really hot cow that he was on, and he would not leave her. And he was behind her the whole time, grunting when they came into the water holes. And yeah, it was incredible, man. Hunting with the Bushmen, that's an old tribe in Africa that can track like nothing you've ever seen before. And it's a big, beautiful part of Africa, just south of the Okavango Delta. It's a very safe country. I think there's only 3 million people roughly that live in the whole country of Botswana. And we flew into South Africa and then took a jumper flight right over to Man, Botswana, and then drove into the Kalahari. It was everything. Anybody, and I'm sure all the guys listen to this or hunters or bow hunters or whatever it may be. If I can say one thing, if you get an opportunity to go to Africa, highly, highly recommend it. It's just it's an outdoorsman's paradise and especially a hunter's paradise.
Yeah. I really desire on going on those hunts. That has that kind of like the scenes and the views of like, you're mainly there for like that type of stuff, but if you kill something, that's just a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's almost like the journey instead of the destination, which I guess that's what hunting should be. But earlier, whenever we were talking about the South Carolina bag limits and stuff, and you perfected your arrow setup with whitetail, what's your arrow setup with whitetail? And then what do you normally take when you go on trips to Africa and stuff like that?
So I took that was not one of the main reasons, but that was a reason for going to Africa is I wanted to test a new bow and some new broadheads to see how they performed. I thought I had my system dialed in, for the last 5 or 6 years. I haven't changed anything. And I had a bunch of people tell me about a new bow and new broadheads, and it's very hard for me to change something without actually proving it. I like to actually, and proving it is not necessarily shooting on the range or shooting into a piece of plyboard or shooting up, 1 or 2 hogs with it. It's actually putting quite a few animals down as big or bigger than whitetail. And so for me, I like to do the testing and the backyard testing. We do quite a bit of that, but I like to put the animals down and see how the stuff really, really performs. So, I mean, I'm happy to dive into what I took to Africa and what my whitetail setup will be this year. If you guys want to talk about that some.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I've been a Matthews guy for probably the last 10 years. I love the Matthews bows, and yeah, they're great. And I whittled it down after shooting all the bows this year, the kind of the flagship bows between the prime and the lift, and really like the lift. Man, that thing, unbelievable speed, super quiet. The only thing, I mean, I guess if I'm nitpicking, the back end hump of that thing is real aggressive. The draw cycle, it starts out nice, and then it's just got a real big jerky hump, almost like the old monsters. And I shot a bunch of stuff with those old Matthews monsters and like that bow. And I know muscle memory, after you shoot it for a while, you would get used to that. So lift was the specs and everything were great. The prime was probably 8 feet per second slower, shooting apples to apples. Quiet wise, it was right in line. I really liked the draw cycle of the prime. And then I liked the balance, the way that thing balanced and aimed. It was like when you got the pin on something, it just stayed there. And the draw cycle is really nice. So if I'm beating up the prime or really nitpicking it, I would say the speed. It's not a speed bow. And so you lose a little bit of performance there. But after shooting them both for quite a while, I settled on the prime. So wanted to, obviously shoot some animals with it and see if what I liked about it continued. And then broadhead wise, same company, man, G5 Mega Meats and their new T2 broadheads. Had heard lots of good stuff about the Mega Meats. I had shot them into our mold. We have a testing mold that we test all broadheads in, and the blades had been a little bit. And so I just was like, no, I'm going to stick with my Trypan. I'm a big Rage Trypan guy, and have shot hundreds of animals with the Trypans. And I just, again and again and again, guys were like, you got to try the Mega Meat. I said, all right, fine. I'll take it to Texas. Had an axis deer. So I took the prime and the Mega Meat, went to Texas, shot that axis at 32 yards. And it was literally like you threw a hand grenade through it. I mean, it ran 70 yards, and it was like you opened a fire hydrant. The blood that was pouring out of it. Now, I did put it right where it needed to go, which is not always the way, unfortunately, that I shoot animals. But in this particular instance, I did put it absolutely right where it needed to be. And so I said, all right, you know what? I got the Africa trip planned. I'm going to take them over there. And then G5 was coming out with that T2, the new 2-blade, which is basically like a Trypan that's just been beefed up, sharper blades, stronger ferrule, a little bit more aggressive tip, and a different kind of locking, kind of like a ball and socket locking mechanism. And I only had 2 of those, but I took them. And before I went, I got them in, and I was concerned with that T2 about how much force it took to open them. It was like you screw them on an arrow, man, and you push them into the edge of a desk, and it would take quite a bit of force. But everything else I liked. And, I said, all right, I'm going to try and shoot a warthog. It's a pretty thin skinned animal, just to see how they open, either a warthog or an impala, something smaller than a whitetail. And shot the warthog when he came in. He didn't go very far. We couldn't find the arrow. but he had a giant 2-inch hole. It was a 2-inch slip hole on both sides, entry and exit. Couldn't find the arrow, got the Bushmen in there. And of course they walked right to the arrow. It's unbelievable what they can do. And I'll land the plane here. The arrow had gone 50 yards, 60 yards on the other side of him and was just buried in the dirt. And I've actually got the heads right here for guys that are looking. They just happen to be laid on my desk, but it just looks just like a tripan. I don't know if you can see that.
Looks really similar.
Yeah. And anyway, it was like it hadn't even been shot. And so then I shot a Gims buck with the second one through the scapulas on purpose. Same results, and just a great head. And then I shot everything else with that mega meat. And that included a 700-pound roan, 2 kudu bulls, wildebeest, a nyala, quite a bit of stuff. And it was just time and time and time again, the same results, and just what I'd gotten with that axis deer early. And I mean, there was one kudu that I'll have to either message you guys or text you guys. The goriness of that, it literally looks like a horror movie scene from where he finally fell over. But so yeah, I'm being awful long-winded here. So yeah, my whitetail setup this year is going to be the Prime, the 32-inch RVX, and then the Mega Meat Broadheads. And I will have a T2 in my quiver. I'm kind of shooting that as like my fixed blade head. I used to always run a fixed blade head in my quiver in case I had to follow something up through the thicket and had to shoot through a thicket or got in a weird situation like that. Because the blades are so tight in there. I mean, I think if you shot through a little bit of grass or a little bit of brush, they're going to stay closed. I mean, it's the tolerances are that tight. So, but they open up great on animals. So yeah, that'll be it. Arrow wise is the Victory Rip TKOs. I'm not changing those. Everything will stay the same there. So yeah, that's the plan for this whitetail season.
Heck yeah. I mean, I appreciate people doing their own testing, like the on meat testing. I think that's really important because you gotta, in a world of like social influence, you got a lot of people spanning from, a crispy on one side and then a ranch fairy on the other side that are always telling you to do something. And it's like, well, maybe you should go try that for yourself, And so
100%.
I think that's where you learn. So, and Africa seems like a really good place to do some testing if you're trying to find out something.
Yeah, their vitals are further forward than a whitetail or even an elk for that matter. So you gotta get in there in those shoulders and play around with it, and you'll find out pretty quick whether you got a broadhead that'll work or not. And I get it, man. I get Chris B's point, and I get the ranch fairy's point. I understand the fixed blade, great, well-built, cut on contact broadhead. I totally get that. I respect that. I understand the point of that, better penetration. I'll knock on wood, but I haven't had mechanical failure in 10 years. They've come a long way, and these new heads are really incredible. The point the awareness that the ranch fairy has brought to the sport we love is pretty impressive as far as the bow tuning, making sure everything's tuned. I know he gets a lot of flack, everybody does this outspoken, right? But I appreciate what he's done. I really, for whitetail, can't get on board of the heavy arrow stuff. I can't personally get on board with that. But hey, at the end of the day, we're shooting whitetails and most shots are inside 30 yards. So, whatever makes you feel confident and you're happy with, knock yourself out. The bottom line is shoot your bow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody tinkers so much, man. Get something that you like, something that you've proven to yourself, and then shoot the bow, shoot the bow, shoot the bow, shoot the bow.
Yeah. That's a good point, because if you're spending more time watching ranch fairy YouTube videos than you are shooting your bow, you got a problem, right? And yeah. I'm guilty. It's a lot easier to sit in the AC and watch bow hunting than it is to go out.
Some people are gearheads too, though. Too.
Very, very true.
I'm not one of those guys, but yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're obviously a mechanical guy, and you've shot that for a long time. I mean, I think the criticism comes with either side, no matter what you're doing. I heard a really good quote one time that was like, the only way if you want to avoid criticism is do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. I was like,
Yeah.
so that's a good way to put it. And, you know, I think you're going to get failure on both sides too. You're going to have, I've seen, last year we had our buddy Peyton shish kebabbed a buck with a 585 grain arrow and a single bevel. And I was like, that wasn't supposed to happen. And I watched a good video the other day of Remy Warren sending one in the shoulder of a whitetail that went in about 2 inches on a mechanical. I just think ultimately, if you have something that gives you confidence and you've shot, done some on meat testing, that's probably and shoot your bow often. That's probably the long and short of it that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you define failure, right? Don Higgins and I know you guys have had him on your podcast. He's a very good friend of mine, and we do a lot together. He hates mechanicals, and he's not afraid to say it. And he said it's simple because of failure, the chance of failure. And it depends on how you define failure. If I'm, guys talk about, I can get my fixed blade heads to fly exactly like my field points. Yep. You absolutely can. I've seen it. I've done it. It can be done. But when you get up in your stand and you torque your bow around a tree limb and it's blowing 25 miles an hour and you got to make a 28 or 32 yard shot, then see how those mechanicals fly. I mean, those fixed blades fly. They're going to plane off. They're not going to be as accurate. So to me, that's failure, right? That's where a mechanical is going to shine, because it's going to be a lot more accurate. It's also going to be quieter. It's also going to have a larger cutting diameter. I mean, we're talking about a game of millimeters. If I'm a millimeter away from that artery and I'm getting all the way in there and I miss it because I've got a 1 1/8 inch cut instead of a 2 inch cut, well, then to me, I failed, right? So there's different ways to look at failure. But again, we're splitting hairs, right? To me, we're splitting hairs. If you feel good throwing on an iron will solid, or I don't want to name drop, whatever kind of fixed blade head you want to throw in there, you shoot it good and you feel good about it, or you're going to shoot the mega meat or the raid stripe in or whatever it is, knock yourself out. They've all killed lots and lots of deer.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a buck in Mexico last year that you shot that you hit him like in the shoulder and got little penetration, but I think you obviously put him down pretty quick. My brother made that exact same shot with a 3-blade NAP fixed head and had the exact same results that you did. And I was like, well, dang, I thought that was just a fixed blade thing. I thought you'd blow through both shoulders. And did you end up hitting that deer in the heart?
No. I think you're talking about the one that was quartering two.
Maybe,
yeah, kind of a quartering two, and I put it right behind the shoulder, and I did get the arrow didn't pass all the way through him, and what happened, it was quartering two, and it went in right behind the shoulder, and I think his back leg kicked it back out because it was the angle was pretty steep, and he probably went 300 yards before we found him, but he was dead when we got there. So I mean, it was a pretty long track job, but lots of blood, and we found guts on trees and stuff, and we were following him up. Not to get real graphic, but those mechanicals can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah. Well, I think
as far as to the animal is concerned.
Yeah. Well, I think just the conversation of having two ends of a spectrum brings a lot of innovation in the space, because you get people have problems with mechanicals and problems with fixed, and they're trying to fix them in that different form factor, right? They're trying to make, even beast broadheads is a good example of it now. They're trying to make the ones that flex with the blades to avoid bone and stuff. And I think we're just going to be 20 years down the line with just a lot better killing solution. And
of course,
it's good for all hunters.
It's just getting better and better and better. I mean, the point is to kill them as fast as you possibly can, right? That's what we all want to do. And the technology is getting better and better. These arrows nowadays, my gosh, the tolerances of these arrows is insane. How flipping good they're making them. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about with you today is, obviously in the intro, we talked about how you travel a lot. Obviously, we're talking about Africa. We're talking about Texas. You travel a lot for whitetail too. And, most of our listeners, and I think probably most of your customers at Osseo Gear, are these 9 to 5 kind of guys, right? These people that have families, they got limited money, especially in this economy. But there had to have been a time, early days of Joe Miles, the traveling hunter, that couldn't have been as smooth and as easy and with as much resources as you do it today. Can you kind of talk about how you first got into the realm of traveling bow hunting?
Yeah. It was something that I really wanted to do. And who was it? I said this the other day on something, but that Jocko Willett guy,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
the Navy SEAL guy, he said, you either want to do it and we'll figure out a way to do it, or you really maybe don't want to do it or you kind of want to do it and you'll find every excuse not to do it. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a very blue collar family. My father was a landscaper. My mom helped him in the business, and I worked every summer with my dad. We laid sod and dug ditches to put irrigation systems in and planted great big caliber trees. And, I would, all summer long, man, that's what I did before football practice was work, every day. But my dad was a huge hunter. He loved to deer hunt and still does. And so the bug bit me super early. And when I got out of college, I started a little guide business and started guiding elk hunting in Oregon and mule deer and waterfowl, and then doing landscaping in the summers. And as that business started to grow, I started to send some guys down to Argentina to do wing shooting. And I met a guy that lived in Illinois that went on one of those trips. He actually put a group together and brokered the trip through me. And he lived in Illinois. We started talking about whitetail, and he's like, I got a couple public ground spots that, we can come out and hunt. So that for me, that's kind of how it started, is I actually drove out there to his place and hunted public land in Illinois. And from there, it kind of grew. I met some guys out there and ended up getting in with a guy that owned a farm, and he let me hunt with him some. Went down to Texas for my business and found a ranch down there. And this was probably too risky for a young guy, but I went to the ranch, and the guy was like, we want to shoot 10 bucks off of this ranch, and I want $2,000 a piece for them. So that was $20,000. And I just said, I'll take it. And I did not have client number one, and I wasn't making $20,000 a year. So I came home and went to work, and I got 9 guys to pay the fee, and then I got a buck for free. Is the way I worked it out. I think I maybe charged $2,500 or something like that for the hunt, and I got 9 guys to do it, and I kept that ranch for 13 years. It was a low fence ranch in Three Rivers, Texas, on the Nueces River, and you shoot anywhere from a 120 to a 150, 100% free range. It was incredible. I loved it. And then the rancher ended up passing away, and the neighbor bought the ranch, and I was out. So that was the end of that. But that's kind of how my traveling hunting started. And since then, it's grown, business wise, things have gotten better, and I've gotten to a point that I can really go and travel. And, family wise, I've got a wife that we dated for 7 years before we got married, all through college. Actually started dating our senior year of high school, and all through college, got married right out of college. And, I always hunted, and she's one of the most laid back humans on earth. But when she does say something, you better listen, or it's going to be rolling pin. It's going to be rolling pin upside the head. But yeah, and my son is 20 years old. I mentioned that, and so he, family wise, there's obviously commitment there, but it's not like a young up and coming family with 3 young kids that you just can't go for 7 or 8 days. It just doesn't work. And same for me when I was working in Africa. I had been gone for 90 days. I'd been in Tanzania, Zambia, and Mozambique, and came home. And my wife, we had our son was a year and a half old, and she was at the airport with him when I got home at 10 o'clock at night. And she said, Art, you've got a decision to make. You're either going to be a professional hunter in Africa, or you're going to have a family. you've got to decide. I can't do this by myself. And obviously that was a very easy decision to make. So yeah, that, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of how I got started with the traveling and hunting.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I mean, I think about, us and then our buddies or close family or something like that. It's like, hey, you want to spend a weekend, or, maybe an extended weekend, 4 or 5 days over here hunting this piece of public. And, obviously we don't have kids yet. We're married, but we can't speak for someone who has a kid, obviously. But with that being said, it's like, 9 times out of 10, their wives are pretty laid back as well, and they could afford to go spend 3 or 4 days out hunting public. Because trust me, we sleep in the bed of our trucks, and we usually eat bologna sandwiches, take water bottle showers, just do the bare minimum on where when we come home, our wives will actually give us a hug. Anyways, where I'm going with that is, it seems to be 9 times out of 10, at least the people that we talk to, it's a convenience thing. Whether it's like, oh, I got family land, or at least I can hunt that's 10, 20 minutes away from my house. I can go hunt that morning, evening, and I can come back, sleep in my own bed. And that seems to deter a lot of people when that's not necessarily the case, but yet they won't hunt elsewhere because they might have, one good buck. And I think that's what kind of feats a lot of people, is just that initial push to actually go travel to hunt, even on a small scale, like driving 2 or 3 hours. At the Hunter's Advantage, we live by the KISS slogan.
You were not supposed to tell them that.
No, I meant we like to keep it simple, stupid. All jokes aside, Exodus is the definition of keeping it simple. Let's say you aren't really sure what arrow setup you should run. The Exodus Arrow Builder will help you build the right arrows for your exact setup.
Or if you don't have time to change those trail cam batteries in the dog days of summer, Exodus has a great selection of cell cameras and regular trail cameras. And if you pair them with one of their solar panels, you'll be set for a long while. I've shot over a dozen deer and a big old black bear in Saskatchewan with these arrows, and I trust them to fly right and get the job done. And they have something for everyone with the Exodus NIS micro diameter arrows or the Exodus MMTs.
So if you want to save money on Exodus arrows, cell cameras, or anything else they got on their website, make sure to check out ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA10 for 10% off.
Once again, that's ExodusOutdoorGear.com, and make sure to use code HA10 for 10% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, I've always had a kind of a wandering adventure soul. I like to go see what's over the other side of the mountain, and I always have. And, everybody's different. I mean, heck, I was walking this morning thinking about, man, if would I be content just staying home right here and hunting these congaree swamp bottoms for hogs and whitetail? And man, I would, I would miss it, but I would be fine staying right here at home. And we've got a big Manchester State Forest public ground spot that you can hunt. And then, I've got a permission on a big farm, and then my son and my son takes advantage of it. we have a little lease, and it's actually a hunt club. There's 12 members in the hunt club. And so we're members of that. And I would absolutely be content, doing the stuff here. But if I had, if I had the choice, I would like to do both. I love the traveling. I love going to Kansas. I love going to Alberta. I love going to Mongolia. I mean, the stuff that you see in these different countries, it makes you appreciate what we have here. And the bond you make with these guys. I mean, it's unbelievable that I can go from little old Columbia, South Carolina, to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, into the mountains right on the China border, and you meet the quote unquote guides, and the fire they have in their eyes, and the language that you two can speak without talking, not a single word of their language or English. But they're hunters, right? They get it. They're hunting, and they get just as fired up as you do. And that's pretty darn neat that you can go halfway across the world and have something that in common with somebody that's grown up and their culture is completely different than yours. So it's great to travel. For me, it is great to travel to hunt, not only for the trophy, but for the cultural experience and putting things in perspective. I mean, when you're in Mongolia, they're still nomads, man. I mean, they don't have cell phones, TVs. They're moving their goats and sheep from one range to another throughout the year, and they may have a moped, right? I mean, it's just the cultural awareness and the appreciation for what we have, and not to get kumbaya-ish and on some soapbox here, but no, it's awesome and it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter if you plan a trip, a little adventure trip that's only 2-3 hours away. You know, if I was going to drive like to parts of Georgia that are 3 or 4 hours away to go to hunt some river basin, that would be a heck of an adventure. Take a little tent and go down there or sleep in the truck. Yeah, man. I mean, sky's the limit from that type style to a full blown African safari. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
You pull out your cell phone in Mongolia and they're like, yeah, it's a time traveler. What's he doing?
Oh yeah. That's right.
That's wild. Yeah. I mean, have you always had sort of I mean, obviously you said you had an adventure kind of mindset. What's over the next mountain? And I think there's a lot of people that could identify that too, even though traditionally they don't think of whitetail hunters that way. People think of a Western guy that way, but not really whitetail guys. But have you always had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit of like, hey, I'm going to find a way to integrate what I love the most with like business so that I can do it more and be around it more?
I hated landscaping so much when I was doing that. A lot of the summers I would bale pine straw during the off season or when we didn't have a big job. And my dad was picking on me about this the other day. It was a box baler with a plunger on top of it. And it'd be 100 degrees and we'd rake up the pine straw and put it in this box baler, plunge it down, tie it up. And then I would get $1 for every bale that I would produce. And, I could do about 45 a day. And so I'd make $45 a day. And I just, the whole time I was doing that from say really 12 or 13 until 18, I was like, I am going to figure out how to create my own business. And it is not going to be landscaping. So that's kind of what he was laughing about, is that he needs to get one of those pine straw balers and bronze it and bring it and put it in my office, because that was the motivating factor to get me out of the pine straw thicket.
No, that's good. I can relate with that pretty well, because that's what I do for a living now. I got my own lawn and landscape irrigation business around Grand Lake here in Northeast Oklahoma. And at least for the mowing side, not so much the landscape and like irrigation yet, but I've also been mowing longer than I have been doing those other things. I absolutely despise it. Like, cut your own grass. I don't care. Like I have 2 kids that work for me. That way I can like sit here at 2 p.m. on a Monday and do this. And just from having a simple conversation, it's like, I love my life a heck of a lot better when I'm doing this versus, even an easy day doing that. So no, I understand.
Let me back up a little bit. There are guys that love that. Right. They're guys. I've got a real good friend, Stephen Keys, that owns US Lawns here in South Carolina, and he eats, breathes. He loves it. He loves landscaping. He loves being outside. He loves cutting grass. I mean, he still gets in the trenches. He does the whole thing. My dad loved it. He loved the process of going in and seeing an apartment complex that was ugly and making it beautiful by landscaping. He loved that. That was it was rewarding for him. I, on the other hand, despised it. So anyway, your question was the entrepreneurial spirit. And yeah, my parents, being their own boss, I'm sure they instilled some of that in me. They were their own boss. And I just always wanted to do that. I didn't like the idea of, not necessarily being handicapped on what I could make, but hey, if I want to work really, really hard and make more this week, I can do that. If I want to sleep in, then man, I'm not going to make any money. So I love the idea of leaving it in my own hands and taking my own risk. And so that's just been, really since I got out of school, that's what I've done.
Were you married when you were selling the hunts in South Texas, when you made that $20,000 financial commitment with no clients?
No, I do not think I was married right then, but it wasn't long after that. We got married pretty young.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I could imagine. We're not talking about 20,000 in today's dollars either. That's 20,000 a decade.
Dude,
plus a go.
Yeah, if I was making $1,500 to $1,800 a year, it would have been a miracle. I do not think I was making that much, because it was a very young outfitting business, and it was really hand to mouth. I would make a good bit during duck season, and then have to stretch that for a long way, and then go out and do the elk and mule deer stuff, and same thing. And if tips were a little bit light, it would wreck your year. So yeah, that was a really big gamble. But in the back of my mind, I was like, what's he going to do if I can't produce him? I mean, I have nothing for him to take. There's nothing he can take. He can take a hit out on me and maybe run me out of Texas, but I mean, he's not. But yeah, it worked out. And I had a pretty good customer base, and I had a bunch of buddies that were bow hunters. So I just felt the risk reward thing. I felt like I could fill it up.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for the Western stuff, the Oregon, you said elk and mule deer. Had you had any experience hunting those yourself before you started outfitting?
Zero. I saved up landscaping some money and went on an elk hunt out in Ironside, Oregon, which is fairly close to Idaho. It's right on the Idaho border. And the rancher had a ranch that had been in his family for 100 years, and I think it was like 60 or 70,000 acres that surrounded Iron Mountain. And I went out and did an elk hunt, and I played baseball in college and was in pretty good shape back then, and hunted. And we saw a lot of bulls and got some close. And like the last morning of the hunt, before I had to head back to the airport, we got on this big herd bull, and he wouldn't come in. He was with his cows, and he started taking them up the mountain. And the guy's like, well, I guess the hunt's over. And I said, well, man, can I just try and catch them? And he said, yeah, I mean, you got an hour, knock yourself out. We're not gonna be able to call that bull in. And sure enough, I called up to him. I left by myself. I took one arrow and my bow, and left my pack and everything. And I took off up the mountain after him. And I ended up catching up to the bull, and he was in a wallow. And I didn't realize what was going on, but I got in kind of this like cedar thicket, and I could hear all this splashing going on. And I didn't know exactly what was going on. And I got up where I thought I was pretty close to it, and I caught some movement out of the corner of my eye. And I looked, and like 35 yards away, this bull is down in this wallow. He's a big 6x6, and he started tearing it up. And of course, my heart is going through my throat. And he walks out of the wallow at 30 yards, perfectly broadside, looking up away from me at his cows. And I get drawn, and right when I finish my draw and get anchored, he turned around and looks at me. And I said, oh man, he's gonna jump the string. And so I aimed right at his brisket and touched it off, and he did not move. He stood completely still, and I shot him through the base of the brisket, and he turned around and ran off with his cows. And so obviously that was not a kill shot. And the guide came up there and said, well, how'd it go? And I showed him my arrow. He says, there's no way that you did that. And I told him the story, and I said, yeah, I made a terrible shot, man. I figured, I've only shot whitetail. I figured he'd drop a little bit, and he didn't. And anyway, long story short, I came home, and the rancher called me and said, would you like to come back out here and guide? And I said, man, I don't know anything about elk hunting. He goes, I can teach you about the calling and all that. He said, I think you could do a good job getting the hunters from the East Coast to come out, and then I can teach you about calling and all of that, and would love to have you come and do it. So that's exactly how that started.
Yeah, no, I definitely would have created my own wallow in my pants if that would have happened. Dude, seeing a bull just splashing around in there, I'd be like, oh.
I never will ever get that vision out of my head. It was something.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, those are the stories, encouraging stories to me as a younger person, because people could see Joe today and say, oh, he's got Osseo gear, he's got a really fast growing apparel company, and is hunting all over the world, and kind of create this must be nice attitude out of it. And they don't see you putting your neck out $20K to go get these people to come on these South Texas bow hunts, or going out hunting, bringing people to hunt elk that you don't even know how to hunt yourself, basically. That's the risk, right? And that story, I don't know, those sort of things just always encourage me.
Yeah, it was, that was a great experience. I mean, he would give me either elk or a mule deer every year and $100 a day in tips. That's what I got. So I did it for 3 seasons, and I shot 2 elk and 1 180-inch mule deer. I mean, he would just in between hunters, if there was a break of like 4 or 5 days, I'd get to hunt by myself for 4 or 5 days on this 60,000 acre private ranch. It was awesome. I mean, it was no way to make a living, but it was a heck of an experience.
So for you, that I mean, just from what the outside looking in, that almost seems like the glory days of hunting to you, right? Where you could have it seems like these abundant opportunities and all that. But so we were talking to Don Higgins about this last week about the glory days of hunting. On one side, I guess whitetail related, it seems like through social media and everything, everybody is management focused, age focused, and it sounds bad, but if you shoot a spike, people get pooped on in the comments saying, "Oh, what's wrong with hunting?" Yada yada yada. So, with that being said, do you think that the glory days are just beginning? Because Don had a opposite feeling on that. And
I think it's no. I think no. I think it's changed. Well, I mean, I know it's changed. It seems like now guys are looking at hunting as a way to quote unquote become famous, right? It becomes a time where everything is social media driven. I've got to kill a 160 to put on social media. But, if I didn't have social media and that 140 or 120 or 115, came by and my heart was beating out of my chest, I would shoot him and I would be happy. And that's how it used to be. When I would kill an 8-point, right? That was a 8-point with a 16-inch wide spread that weighed 180 pounds here in South Carolina. Man, that was, my family celebrated that. And it wasn't, there was never any bashing. I mean, my dad would get a little ticked off if I'd, shot a nice big mature 8-point, and then I'd shoot a 6-point or something like that. He'd be like, "Come on now, if we're gonna keep those 8 points, but it wasn't. It was just kind of friendly banter between my father and I. But nowadays, and I was also talking about this the other day, is it's just changed so much. It feels like, hunting back then was family, immediate friends, and it was an experience. Now it has become like a glorified sport that you've got to produce to keep your name in the limelight, to keep, to keep it as a sport, if you will. Like an NFL sport. You got to kill these type deer, and you got to kill them in 3 or 4 different states, and you've got to keep your Instagram reel full of different kills, and it just goes on and on and on. So it's changed. I mean, the whole world's changed. I mean, everything's changed. Everything's gotten more modern. Do I think it's bad for the sport, good for the sport? I really don't have much of an opinion on that. I think as long as guys are doing it right, and doing it right, what does that mean? Doing it legally, and there, technology's come so far. I mean, we could go down a huge tangent here on bait and cell cams, and the modern compound bow, and I do think there's a movement to get rid of some of that and try and go back to some of the old school stuff. To get rid of some of the cell cams, to get rid of the bait, to get rid of the food plots. Don, you didn't hear me say that. And just go back to hunting, right? To go back to how it was 20, 30 years ago. I think there is a movement for that. And it feels pure. To me, it feels pure to do that. But I run cell cameras. I put out feed to locate deer. I'm shooting the most modern compound bow and expandable broadhead, and all of that gives you an advantage. So to each his own. I think that's the main thing. I'm not going to get on the soapbox and criticize any of it. Everybody can do what they want, and in my opinion, as long as it's legal, and I know that's cliche and gets said a million times, but guys can do what they want to do and what makes them happy. But I think when you're chasing those Instagram likes and not hunting for the animal and the experience, and really treating that animal with respect because you took his life, that's an error. That's a mistake.
Yeah, we're not from the old generation per se, but we got to grow up hunting with our family and friends. And I shot my first deer in 2005, and which, that's a dang near 20 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. But I was talking with my brother-in-law the other day, and he's never shot a deer before. So we went to the bow shop, and he's like, I want to get a bow. Can I get a good bow for $2,000? And I was like, well, my first bow was nothing. It was a hand-me-down with the wrong draw length, and it was a target bow. And he went in and bought his bow, and he's like, is this a nice bow? And I said, well, it's about 5 years newer than my bow, so it's a pretty nice one. And we left the shop, and he said, well, when do I shoot my first buck? And I said, we got to take about 20 steps back from there. And that's the thing. I feel like we, as people who have been hunting and got to see, some really good times and got to learn the lessons, like, I feel obligated to the people that I'm taking to show them a way that is not necessarily aligned with what's going on right now. Right. I'm like, I want you to struggle a little bit. I don't want to put a feeder out for you and come out and you wax one first day and then be like, all right, I'm good with this hunting thing. On to the next.
Yeah. Yeah. The instant gratification. And that's the world we live in. Right. I mean, my son is a little bit spoiled. I keep picking on him, but I mean, truly, I mean, the younger generation is spoiled, and I see it when I travel. I mean, these kids that come in with their dads that are 8, 10, 12 years old, they've shot a Dall sheep, that they've shot elk. They're in Texas on a heavily managed ranch, and they have no appreciation for it. And it's just things have, but that, that goes, I'm sure there was guys back in the day that same thing, they would do the same thing, but it's just, I guess modern times have modern problems, right? Technology has increased. Some guys love it. Some guys can't stand it. And, you'll be on one side of the fence or the other.
Yeah. I mainly think about it from a resource perspective. We went fishing down on the coast in Port O'Connor, Texas this last weekend. And we were out doing the bull red. I don't know if you ever fished for bull reds, but we're doing the run where they all are smacking bait fish on the top. And the guide we were with, he said, he was talking to other guides out there, and he's like, nothing like fishing with 50 of your closest friends. Cause there was 50 boats just chasing this one ball of fish. Right. And your line wasn't in the water 2 seconds and you were getting smashed. But there was boats. I hooked into a giant one that was strip and drag, and a boat drove in between us and the next boat. My line got caught in him.
Oh,
and,
no.
And the guide was like, make sure your sinker hits his motor. And I was like, no, it's not that big of a deal. But, I see it because I'm like, what a cool resource, right? What a cool experience as someone who gets to go do that. But, there's 50 other people, and can you blame people for wanting to show other people the resource there? So I don't know if there's a good answer for it all, more that just if people have the right intentions and we're taking care of the resource, that everybody can enjoy it.
I love that. Very, very well said. And that's to respect the resource. When you kill it and give it away and off to the next one, and that one's done and on to the next one. I mean, that's not, to me, that's not really respecting the resource. I mean, I'm big on the kill it, you eat it. We try and do that with a lot of the stuff, obviously in Africa, we eat a ton while we're there. We can't bring the meat home, but every one of those animals is respected, and that meat is accounted for and is consumed. So I think that's an important thing that I have an issue with is if guys aren't respecting the animals or the resource, just exactly what you said. There's got to be a really high level of respect, and it's not just to get a grip and grin photo to drop on your Instagram page.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that too. I mean, it's talking about the content space. I mean, obviously you have a brand in this space. It's a clothing brand, but content helps create demand, right? You've hunted on some TV shows and stuff in the past and maybe still do. I mean, what do you think about the general, hunting for content, or people hunting multiple states or multiple places just for the sake of content? Like, do you think that strains the resource? Like, how do you kind of think about that whole thing?
I think it gives you an opportunity to respect the resource. It can absolutely be abused, right? It can be abused and can be for the wrong, but it also gives you an opportunity to showcase the resource and respect the resource, and hopefully introduce some more people to what we love, right? To bring, I don't know if the numbers are right or wrong or what, but I hear the hunter numbers are declining, and that's not good. We need as many hunters and guys coming in and hunting as we can, because we don't want to lose it. It's something that we all cherish. So I think having, if you do have the big Instagram page, or you do have the brand, or you do have the TV show, or whatever it may be, I think it gives you an opportunity to respect the resource and show the resource in a positive light.
Yeah, I guess I kind of wonder too that you talk about people, the number of hunters declining. We didn't used to have access to seeing everybody's kills, right? So you get on social media October 1 when most of the country opens, and it's like, wow, all the deer in the country died, and all the big ones. And it kind of looks like that. And I think about it when we used to have to check-in stations and stuff. That was the only way you could find out. There wasn't no sending a picture over your phone or connected to the internet. It was like they take pictures and then print them out and put them on the wall in there. And that's how you get to see what's killed. I wonder if it's just more of a thing where we see everything now in which we didn't used to get to have access to seeing everything like that.
Well, you do. I mean, you see it. I mean, let's get to November 7th and start scrolling through Instagram. The way these algorithms are, they know that you love looking at whitetail deer, and it's just 180, 170, 220, 215, 210, just boom, boom, boom. And I can't tell you the number of messages I get from like my son's crowd, that 17 to 21-year-old guys. Hey, is this one mature enough? Should I shoot this deer or not? I'm like, X, how many bucks have you shot? And does that one get you excited? Right? Yeah. Yes. If you want to shoot that deer, shoot him, man. Come on. You don't need to impress anybody. You need to enjoy it and enjoy the hunt. And so, yeah, we get a lot of that.
Yeah. We usually have this thing, we call it the oh damn factor. So whenever we're like sitting in a tree and we see a buck walk in and it makes us say, oh damn, and the bow magically levitates into your hand, that's probably one you should shoot.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I respect that about you too. You're going out there shooting those South Carolina bucks, whether it's a 120-inch velvet 6-point or then going all the way to Illinois and Ohio. Like, I feel like that keeps a lot of the purity in the sport, of just like personal enjoyment. I really think that's really important for this progression as a bow hunter, and not comparing yourself to someone else, because nobody's hunting is even remotely similar.
Yeah. That's right. I love the chase here in the swamps of South Carolina. We come in early and have the velvet season. I love doing that. I love doing that with my son and my buddies right here around home. It's a lot of fun. And then, when you get out to Kansas and you get an opportunity to shoot something, 150 inches or bigger, you got a chance at Boone and Crockett's and stuff like that. Then you can lock in on something bigger out there. So it's relative to the industry and doing what you like to do, and gives you that oh damn factor.
Yeah. There you go. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because we were all talking before the podcast, and you said out of all the places you've ever hunted, Oklahoma was the hardest, right?
Oklahoma? Well,
yeah. Yeah, you said it was the hardest place you've ever hunted, right?
Yeah, Oklahoma is definitely the hardest place I've ever hunted. Anybody that can kill a buck over a 4-point in the state of Oklahoma is probably one of the best hunters on the planet. I would definitely agree with that.
All right, thank you. Clip that, TikTok. Here we go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier, obviously balancing, priorities with passion and that sort of stuff. It's obviously a little different now when you have grown kids and your wife's had 25 seasons to get used to the grind. But what was it, you talked about it from the African perspective, but what was your kind of traveling or out of state experience like in the early days of like, would you go on a lot of 1-week trips or like weekend trips, or kind of how did you balance the family passion thing there?
Yeah. I didn't do a ton of it. It would be maybe a week of personal hunting, and then like to Illinois, for example, it would be kind of that November 1st to the 5th or 6th, and I would drive out there and drive home, and then I would take that group work-wise, quote unquote, work-wise, to Texas to hunt on that ranch. So that was actually, I would get a hunt out of that, but I'd make a little bit of money on it too. So that was kind of the way I guess structured it, is that if I could make money doing it, then it made sense. If it was a personal trip, then it was probably only a week a year. Is that was what I would do. So I kind of had her snowed, right? I kind of oh, this is a work trip. I got to go.
That's the biggest Trojan horse that's ever been had in a marriage. Is I got to go work.
Yeah, it's a work trip, babe. I got to put food on the table. I got to go to Oregon to elk guide for a month. I got to go to Texas to whitetail hunt for a couple weeks. I got to make some money. So, but it started again, man. I'm talking about not knowing if I was going to be able to make my rent payment, the first couple years, and just sticking with it over time. And then, Osseo got started, and it's growing every single year, and we're real excited about the brand. But take basically 22 years old to I'm 49 now, and have just continued to pound every single year and try and grow a business.
You see, when I hear stories like that, it makes that's like the nutshell of America. Like, I'm not trying to like spiff you up or anything like that, but it's like, okay, risk, consistency, and then the payoff. And it's like those three things are like the magic to success, is what we've gathered from talking to, people like you and other very successful people. And it's just like, it's awesome. Very refreshing to hear time after time again. If you guys are anything like us, you love being in the deer woods and chasing big bucks. But there's another part of you that has that itch to chase other big game species.
If you've ever dreamed of chasing black bear, mule deer, or moose, Alberta, Canada is the land of opportunity for these adventure-style hunts.
Each year, hundreds of first-time visiting hunters from around the world come to Alberta for the options, quality, and accessibility that the land offers.
With over 1,800 Boone and Crockett entries and endless possibilities of taking multiple species on a single trip, Alberta is truly a paradise for a big game hunter. This is why we partnered up with the Alberta Professional Outfitters Society. To check it out, go to apos.ab.ca and click Find an Outfitter. From there, you can browse all the different big game species and hunting styles that fit with what you want out of the hunt.
Or you can send a free hunt inquiry through the Follow the Lead tool, and the outfitters who have what you are looking for will reach out to you directly.
So make sure to check out apos.ab.ca to learn all about hunting in Alberta and get connected to the right outfitter for you.
We live in a great country that affords us an opportunity to work hard and do something that we really like to do. And it's been an absolute blessing to be able to work in an industry that I love. And it's nothing special about me by any stretch of the imagination. Just, a lot of hard work over the years and sticking to what I love to do.
Yeah. I mean, so you got started, you said you were doing obviously the Oregon thing, you've done the Texas thing. At what point did you head over to Africa to do that for 7 years?
So all of that was kind of in conjunction. The Africa hunting season is during the summers, really. And so I couldn't go for the whole year. And normally, so I went over there and I went through a professional hunter school. And I did that in 1999. I went to a professional hunter school, got hooked up with two safari outfitters over there. And they have what's called an apprenticeship. And you're supposed to do 2 full seasons of apprenticeship. And then you can get your full professional hunter's license. And then you can begin guiding. And that was my ultimate plan, is that I wanted to guide safaris for 6 months out of the year, and then come home and sell safaris for 6 months out of the year, because that was, man, I just couldn't imagine a better life than that. And the problem was I couldn't go for a full season. but because of family and I was married at the time, we hadn't had Jack yet. And so I would go for like 3 months and come home. So a 2-year apprenticeship turned into like a 5-year apprenticeship. And then I finally got my license, and I was basically doing it. I'd gotten offered to take over a hunting concession and be the manager of that block, and then eventually get my own spot in Mozambique. So things were going, and I was developing a list of clients, and was able to sell 5 or 6 big, like 21-day lion, elephant, buffalo safaris every single year. And so it was starting to come together. And then we had our son, and my wife again is super chill and laid back, but I understood her point. I mean, you got to make a choice. It's not fair to us as a family for you to be gone for this much time, and you're going to miss your son, growing. And it was not, something I had to do, was to make the decision that I can put the Africa stuff on the back burner and do more of a brokerage, right? I started kind of brokering hunts, and that's, we obviously had the Texas thing going. I would send some guys elk hunting, started down in Argentina with the wing shooting. That became a big part of our business. And then it basically created Sporting Adventures, which is a company that I still have today. And we broker hunts. We do a few safaris every year. We do quite a few wing shooters down in Argentina, and do a few other small hunts here and there. But that company is still going to this day. And then when COVID hit, that not to tell my life story here, but when COVID hit, we had no revenue for 2 years. Because no international travel. I've got a vacation rental property business as well, but it shut all that down. So for 2 years, I had to lay off 18 employees, had to sell my building, thought I was going bankrupt. And this is not long ago, guys. I mean, this was 2019, 2021. I mean, this was just a few years ago. And when all that started happening, I said, I got to pivot and create something domestically. So that's really one of the main reasons we started Osseo and got the clothing line going, because we needed to be able to make some money, and we didn't know how long it was going to last. I mean, I told my sister's my operations manager for my vacation rental property business, and she was the last employee that we had. And I showed her our checking account, and I said, when this hits zero, you and I both are out of a job. We'll go with it until it hits zero, and then it's done. There's nothing we can do. It's not our fault. And so started Osseo up, and that started growing, and then we're going into our 5th year with that, and luckily the vacation stuff has come back, and so things have picked up. But yeah, man, it's been some serious peaks and valleys over the last 20 some odd years.
Yeah, you ain't gonna learn that from a social media post either. So I mean, it's good to hear it in long form. I mean, the majority of folks probably won't ever get to go on an African safari and do one of these big combo hunts with a PH. But for, folks that are actually interested in something like that, like what's the main draw to Africa versus like, just going and hunting, a combo hunt in North America, maybe doing an elk and a mule deer? What's the draw in your mind? Because something obviously captivated you about it, or you wouldn't have spent 7 years of your life chasing it.
It's a hunting culture that is all encompassing. You literally, you fly out of Atlanta, Georgia, or wherever it may be, you land in Africa, and within a day you're looking at animals that you read about in books and have seen pictures of: elephants, warthogs, zebra. I mean, that's fascinating. You throw in the native component of the trackers and the way these guys live and get around, and their ability to track different animals. And then you throw in the dangerous game component where you're not necessarily the top of the food chain when you've got leopard, lion, elephant. It's just an adventurer's Disney World. I mean, you get over there, and even if you're not hunting, I'm not big on the big ecotourism areas that are in the safari buses, and you got 45 people jammed in there, and there's a lion kill and 45 buses come up right around him. I'm not into that. But if you went into the real bush and you didn't want to hunt, and you got with the Bushman trackers or whoever it may be, and you tracked down an elephant bull and took pictures of him, or you tracked down a herd of buffalo and it took you a day and a half to catch up to that one herd of buffalo. And you just took pictures. You didn't even shoot one of them. That's a life experience that you can't get anywhere else. And it's amazing. It's a beautiful experience and something that gets in your blood, and you'll never, ever, ever forget that.
That sounds like a great time. I admire the countries that, although guided hunting is somewhat commercialized. I mean, you see, countries like Canada, and you go up there and they have this crown land, right? And it's like, well, where can you hunt? It's like, as far as you can see that way,
Yeah.
that's where we can hunt. And you go to Africa, you get a concession as far as you can see that way. That's just something that's so unique in a world of 20, 30, 40 acre tracts segmented everywhere. It's like, people don't even understand what spot and stock or that sort of hunting can be like. That's got to be adventure. That's ultimately what it is.
It is. It's ultimate adventure, and it's just incredible to be able to get in that, and from daylight to dark, you're immersed in hunting and wildlife. I mean, you wake up, and if you're there in July, August, it's cold in the morning. You're around a fire. And as soon as it starts breaking day, you're hopping in the Land Cruiser, and you have no idea. You might run into a herd of elephant. You might, bump into a sable, a kudu. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, and you just do not have a clue what's around the next corner. And it's an experience, and it is a safari. It's an adventure and a journey. And I would say, I don't know anybody that's been on one that has gone, man, I really shouldn't have done that. I've never, ever, 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 ever heard that. I've heard quite a few people go on sheep hunts and go, I do not know what I was thinking. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I would never go back in those mountains for any stretch of the imagination. But I've never heard somebody go to Africa and say, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that again, or I didn't enjoy that.
So on that same vein, what's your most memorable hunt there in Africa?
My most memorable hunt.
And I guess this would be either the guiding or you actually hunting it.
Yeah, I mean, I've told this elephant story a few times, but that's got to be probably the most memorable, or the one that just comes to the forefront of my mind. It was my first. I'd finally gotten fully licensed, and had booked a client out of Atlanta, Georgia, who owned a big construction company, and he wanted to shoot a big elephant. And I know a lot of your listeners are going to be like, why on earth would somebody want to shoot an elephant? And there's a lot to that. And I'll be quick about it, but an elephant gets 6 sets of molars, and those molars wear out over time. And when they get on their last set of molars, they can't digest their food, and the way they die is through starvation. They starve to death. They have really no natural predators until they, get to a point where they can't move, and then the hyenas will come in and take them out. But so that's actually how you track a big mature elephant, is you find the dung that's not digested. His last set of molars, he's not able to digest the leaves that he's been eating. So you find the dung, and it's got full leaves in it. So you see the size of the track, the undigested dung. So that's an old bull. Now, you don't know what kind of ivory he's got, but that's an old bull and one you would want to follow. So anyway, had this client and went out, found that exact stuff, found the bull. And the most ethical way to shoot a elephant is a brain shot. They never even know what happened to them. And they've got a temporal lobe in the side of their ear, which is where the brain sits on the side brain shot. And then the frontal, they have a zygomatic arch. If you look at an elephant's head, they've got a protruding arch on the side of their head. And no matter where it goes, their brain lies right in the middle of that. And so I set this guy up for a side brain shot, and he didn't shoot. He's just looking at it. And we're talking 40 yards away. This bull's eating out of a tree. He's looking at it. Won't shoot. And then, of course, the kiss of death, I feel the wind on the back of my neck. And the elephants in this area get poached. We were hunting in Tanzania, southern Tanzania, and there's a lot of poaching that goes on between the Mozambique and Tanzania side of the border. So these elephants really don't like people at all. Like, there's a lot of people that get killed by elephants in this area. Well, this bull smelled us, sticks his trunk up, trying to figure out where we are. We comes around and starts walking towards us. And now he's inside 30 yards. And I said, shoot him. He didn't shoot. We get to 20 yards, and I've got a 500 double, and I'm picking it up because I'm about to, say, we're out. Let's go. You're not going to shoot. Well, he touches one off, knocks the bull down, and I think he's brain shot him. Well, the bull starts to get back up, and we were trained as PHs that immediately you put a round behind his shoulder in his lungs, and then as he's running away, you shoot him in the back end and break his hip, and then that lung shot will finish him off. But the point being, if you shoot him for a brain shot and you don't hit the brain, the bullet just goes through gray matter, and he's not going to die. But you've got a wounded bull out there that can go for miles and miles and miles, and you'll never find him. So I shot him behind the shoulder, and normally they turn and run. Well, he didn't. He turned and came right at us and threw his ears out, and I had one barrel left, and I got out that side of that zygomatic arch and pulled it back to the middle of his head and touched that thing off. And we stepped it off. It was 16 steps from where I shot, and it did brain him, and his head went back and he hit the ground and literally shook the earth when he hit the ground. And so that one, I was young, man. I was in my 20s, and that one, I remember that like it was yesterday too. I mean, that was the closest I've ever come to getting killed hunting.
I bet your wife loves that story.
Oh, she probably wanted it to happen. As long as the life insurance was paid up, she keeps wanting me to go back to Africa. So
there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
My wife the other day, we were going noodling, and she said, "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." I was like, "No, that means all fun is gone."
Shots fired. Yeah.
No, she's just very safe. She's like, "Don't put your hands in a hole and go underwater." I was like, "Well, I just won't even go then." We did.
Is that when you texted me and asked if you could stay here for a couple nights, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay. I understand. I understand. Yeah. Being 16 steps from an elephant, the Black Widow guys we talked to a few weeks ago, that's exactly how they were describing their encounters. Is they were describing it as in steps, and it was like a whole different perspective, because we're used to, okay, grab a rangefinder, oh, that's 30 yards, that's 25 yards, but to count it off in steps, that's like obviously a lot more intimate feeling, and I don't think a lot of people understand like exactly how close that actually is.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's inside 20, inside 20 yards. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah. That
did you have any experience guiding folks that like weren't prepared? You see a lot of folks like shooting. You talk about shooting your bow often, right? You need to almost be one with the weapon. But were there people that would come over to Africa just completely unprepared and like terms of practice?
Yes, you get terrible shots. More so with the archery elk and mule deer hunting. I've never tracked more wounded animals in my whole life than archery, mule deer, and elk. Guys would, they would have pulled their bow out like a week before they came on the trip, and nerves becomes a big thing. I mean, you get a screaming 6x6 bull at 20 yards just ripping trees apart, and you can't even see in your peak because you're shaking so bad. So you get a lot of that. You get, and that's a controllable, it's controllable. It's something that you can really work on to control is being a good shot and trying to do some training where you're under duress, but it's not the same as having that bull or that elephant or whatever it may be. And I asked the guy, I said, "Man, why didn't you shoot him when he was," and he was like, I just couldn't pull the trigger. I was just blown away at how big. I mean, it's an 8-ton animal at 30, 40 yards. And he just said, that's the first one I've ever been that close to. And I didn't know what to do. And so, yeah, it's a different kind of animal, different world.
Do you train? I mean, I see it on your Instagram sometimes. If you train physically for hunting too, right? And then you shoot your bow. Like, what kind of training do you do for, obviously you're travel hunting?
Yeah. So for like the sheep and goat stuff, I try to do a lot of core, a lot of legs. That's the biggest thing. And I got beat up pretty bad on a couple sheep and mountain goat hunts. where my core and legs and hips weren't strong enough, and it was a hindrance. My physical fitness was a hindrance. But after you do a few of them, you figure out where your personal weaknesses are. My cardio was always pretty good, but my actual core strength, hip strength, and leg strength wasn't quite good enough. So yeah, do a lot of that. I've got a hunt coming up in Kyrgyzstan for ibex in October, and so I'm really starting to hammer the legs and the core and try to get after that.
Do you shoot your bow too after you lift to like simulate some of the more stressful situations, or how do you do it from that perspective? Because it's not always peachy.
Yeah. So normally, like especially if it's an upper body workout, I don't like to shoot my bow right after that because I develop pretty bad form because my muscles are fatigued. But I'll get an assault bike, or even you can do burpees, right? Burpees. I've got a tower that you can run up. That's got a shooting platform at the top. Anything that really elevate your heart, and you'll be amazed at 30 yards how poor of a shot you become. I did it the other day and did like 15 burpees, got up and shot 3 arrows. And my, at 30 yards, I'm normally pretty deadly. I was sometimes having a 6-inch group at that range because of the fatigue. And that's absolutely what can happen on that elk hunt. And you're still, it's different from being physically fatigued and being, I guess, adrenaline or emotional fatigued. When you're set up and that elk comes in or whatever it may be, and your heart starts beating out of his chest. But hey, that's the best we can do, right? That's the best we can do to try to simulate that. But yeah, so try to do as much of that as I possibly can. And by no stretch of the imagination am I perfect. I mean, I miss stuff and wound stuff and do all that, but I try to mitigate as much of that as possible.
I've been doing a Mountain Tough program for 16 weeks, and my wife was asking me what the biggest complaint I have about it, and I was like, every single day is leg day. Every day on that program is. I'm walking around like I got a stick up my butt for the last 4 months because every day my legs are just done.
Yeah, that program is absolutely incredible. There was a workout they had years ago. I was training for a Dall sheep hunt in the McKenzie Mountains. No, that's not right. I was in the Wrangell Mountains in Alaska. Really, really rough country. And one of their workouts, and maybe you do this one, is that you would run a quarter of a mile as fast as you could run it, and then you would do a quarter of a mile of lunges with 20-pound dumbbells. And then you would run a quarter of a mile as fast as you can, and then a quarter of a mile with 20-pound dumbbell lunges. Dude, I couldn't get through it. And then I was like, I'm ditching the dumbbells, and then I still couldn't get through it. I mean, those Mountain Tough workouts are legit. That's big boy stuff.
Well, the first day was like they were like, run a mile, come in here, do this, go back out, run a mile, come and do this. I was like, okay, first of all, it's gonna take me 3 hours. So I don't know. I can't run a mile. Yeah, it's crazy how quick that can change. So what are obviously you do a ton of travel hunting, but what are you up to this next year? What do you got on the docket that's pretty exciting?
Yeah, so we'll be doing the whitetail circuit, the whitetail stuff, here at home, Kansas, Texas, or Mexico, Ohio, potentially Alberta. I'm going to go up to Alberta early, and then international wise, I did that stuff earlier in the year, but I've got Kyrgyzstan in October, and then I'm going to do Pakistan for ibex in March. So that's kind of what I've got on the docket right now. There's a Himalayan and a seen ibex in Pakistan that I really want to go and try out.
That's exciting. Is there any place on the whitetail circuit that you're thinking you're going to pull a big one from? Like any history from a previous buck, or just going in?
So I won't say this is the first year, but it's a little bit blind. I didn't get drawn in Kansas, and so normally, if I get drawn out there, I've got some real good ideas. So I'm pigeonholed to a small 80-acre tract that I actually own out there. I've got a landowner tag, but you have to hunt that one property, and it's a new farm. I've never hunted it before, so I'm blind there. Ohio, I do have the same little 37-acre tract. The guy's given me permission to hunt back on that again this year, and there were some up and coming bucks there. But I don't know anything. There was nothing giant there last year, and there were a couple nice ones, but I have not seen anything there that's really blown up. Alberta will be a new place, so yeah, kind of going blind this year, and I welcome it. I'm excited about it. Who knows what may come up, but on the other token, it is a lot of fun having some history with one and figuring out how you're going to outwit him based on everything that you've gathered and the strategy you got in place. So just happy to be hunting, boys. I'm excited to get out there and get after it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. These 100-degree days aren't really helping any, but yeah, no. we're getting there. But Joe, last time we had you on the pod, and I asked you this question, you talked about 190, 185 inch 9-point that you had a run in with, but you weren't able to seal the deal.
Yeah.
But besides that one, what's that one encounter that haunts you? Maybe we can get another one out of you real quick.
Ooh, another one that haunts me from a whitetail perspective.
It doesn't even have to be whitetail either.
Besides elephant, can't be a giant elephant.
Yeah, no,
that one got dealt with.
won't be an elephant. Let me think. I missed a huge ibex in the country of Turkey. I was going to bow hunt, and the terrain was not conducive of bow hunting. So I ended up borrowing a rifle, and the guy had a makeshift turret on top of it. And we went out and shot his rifle at 100 yards, and we had drawn like a quarter size circle. And 100-yard shot, I put the bullet in the black. And I think it was luck. I think it was absolute luck, but I was like, all right, we're good. And what I should have done is confirmed his turret, shot one at 200, 300, 400 yards to verify all that. But I did not do that. And we hiked up, and it was rough country to the point that we got up so high. I think we were like 11,000 feet high, and we were walking across this like glacier on the edge of this mountain top, and you could look down and see the eagles below you circling. That's how freaking high we were. And I had a camera guy with me, and he basically quit. He actually teared up. He was worn out and scared to death, and I was scared too, walking across this glacier looking thing. But we ended up sitting down and had like a little lunch and kind of got our wits back about us, and went another, I don't know, quarter of a mile, half a mile. And there was that big thing that we had glassed from the bottom, and he was 400 yards away, out eating out of a little bush. And I got set up on my pack, dialed the turret to 400. Everything was perfect. Cameraman over my shoulder. I mean, I'm dead on him. Touch it off, and you can see the vapor trail go right over his back. And they exploded and were gone forever. So yeah, that one haunts me to this day. I mean, he was a great big old 50-inch thing, just big sweeping horns that went all the way back. So yeah, that one got away and learned some lessons. But hey, it's part of it.
Was that your most grueling hunt you've been on?
That Wrangell Mountain hunt that I was talking about earlier in Alaska was definitely the most grueling. We had to cross a glacier there. I shot it was a combo for Dall sheep and mountain goat, and the Dall sheep we shot on the opposite side of a glacier, and you could see across the glacier, but it's just up and down in ice, and it's terrible. But we got across, killed the Dall sheep, then we had to pack him all the way back across, pretty worn out. We flew out, and then the mountain goat season, it didn't come in for like 2 days. So then we flew back in these bush planes. And as it so often happens, first morning we get up, we come out, we find these mountain goat. There's a Boone and Crockett Billy. We didn't know he was Boone and Crockett at the time, but Stalk down on him. He's laying on this green flat place. I shoot him right there. We walk down and it's perfectly flat. We take our boots off, put our Crocs on. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning, sun shining. We dadgum cake that thing out, cut all the meat up, load our packs up, and now we got to get back to the landing strip, but we have to go down this huge ravine towards that glacier. And man, that was the roughest, most awful thing I have ever done in my life. I fell multiple times and almost slid off the mountain because I had too much weight in my pack. Another, that was the opportunity. That was what I was saying earlier. I didn't have good enough core strength to where I was holding on to a boulder, and the guy had to come back and help me get my pack off so I can scamper back up and get my pack back on. Yeah, and it got dark on us, and the canyon actually choked out at the bottom, and there was like a 30-foot deep river that ran through that. So we had to hike back up into these willows, and it's dark and it's foggy, and we're worn out, and we're walking. He's like, we got to get off this ridge. We got to get off this ridge. And I said, dude, I am older than you, and I do not have the experience you had, but it is freaking dark. Let's just pull our sleeping bags out, sleep till daylight, and then we'll get up and go. And finally convinced him to do that. We did. We woke up the next morning. If we had gone 50 more yards, we'd have walked off a cliff. No joke. He was in the lead. He would have died without a doubt because the fog was so bad you couldn't see, and he'd have slipped. And so we had to turn around and go back another way. And finally, by about noon the next day or that day, we got to the landing strip and got out of there. But that was the most grueling, hardest hunt I've ever done.
What do you take away from something like that? Like mentally, what does that do to you? Being like, oh, this dude could have potentially died, and even to put yourself in that position, because me, this is a super low level of what you're talking about. If I get too high in a tree, I'm like, my wife wouldn't like this. This ain't worth it. You know what I mean? So like, to be on a side of a cliff and like being like, I could probably slip and die at any moment. What's that feeling like?
Man, it's I don't in the moment. I guess it's we have to do something, right? We have to get out of here. So we'll be as safe as we can, and that's where age. Now maybe he gets to the edge of the cliff and he doesn't fall off of it, but I would have bet that he would have. But I mean, it makes you. I don't really know how to describe that. It makes you try to be as prepared as you possibly can, and then when I look back on it and I get in another really tough situation or tough hunt, I'm like, this ain't as bad as the Wrangell Mountains. You know, I can make it through here. This ain't near. Yeah. It's not near as dangerous, and it's not near as severe terrain. And I made it out of that, so I can get through this. So I guess that's really the point, is that when you survive something like that, or not survive, when you get through it, you can always, that's a little pearl that you can file in the back of your head that, hey, I can make it through this.
Yeah. Does that ignite your fire for doing more of those hunts, or is that like, hey, let's go again in a couple years? I'm good for a while.
No, I eat that stuff up, man. I love it. I love it. I'm not in as good a shape as I used to be. I'm 49 now, and a lot of this was kind of late 30s, and I was in much better shape, but still I can still get around pretty good, and I love it, man. I love to push it, see how far we can go, and get over the mountain and see what's on the other side.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, we appreciate you coming on, but what's new for you guys at Osseo Gear this year? Is there anything that you guys are excited about that's coming out, or what do you got going on?
Yeah, so we just launched our new website actually today. I don't know when this episode will air, but our new website got launched today. It's really neat. Got a lot of interactive features. We're also doing a site-wide preseason 30% off sale. That'll go all the way to August 5th. That'll go through there. This year, new on the docket, we obviously got all of our stuff will be restocked and back in the warehouse, but we've got a whitetail puffy jacket that we're real excited about. It's ultra quiet, very packable. It's got Primaloft gold in it, so it's got an incredible warmth to weight ratio, and it's a really, really good layering piece. We've got a 3D like leafy type jacket that's neat that we've run a few ads on here lately. We've got a fingerless glove coming, merino wool fingerless gloves. And we've got our base layers. We're also coming out with talls this year. We're going to have talls in longer inseams, longer sleeve length, longer torso. And then we're also coming out with smalls. So some of the ladies can start wearing some of our stuff. So going to be a good year.
Yeah, that's exciting. So where's the best place for people to check out what you got going on with Osseo, and then following you on social media, or maybe listening to your podcast?
Yes, social media is Joe Miles Hunting. That's Instagram and Facebook. And then Osseo is Osseo Gear, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We've got the Mission Whitetail podcast / testing that we do. That's on YouTube. And then OsseoGear.com is our website.
Yeah, it sounds good. So you combined your 2 YouTube channels too, right? You just got one unified channel now?
Yeah, we sure did. We wanted to put it all together and make sense. So yeah, we combined them and growing that and enjoy the podcast as you guys do. You know, it's a lot of fun to do the podcast and interview different guys that hunt and hear different tactics and different things that's going on. Talk about what we love to do, right? It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's going to be here before we know it.
I know.
Yeah.